Okay, so for this assignment, you asked us to tell a story, and so I decided I'd tell one of my favorite stories. It's the urban legend of the Black Eyed Children. So, the Black Eyed Children are these creepy little children. They are very small in size. Usually, the age range is like between 8 and 12, and they appear in like groups of two or three. So, when you see one child, you'll see a few in a go. And so these children, their appearances is what's most noticeable about them from the beginning. They have very pale, ashy skin that's very texturized, um, and they are usually dressed out of place. Their clothing looks like a few generations like behind what normal clothing was. So like if people in today's age were to see them, they'd be dressed as like though they were from the 40s or 50s. Earlier, like in American history, they were dressed like, in 1800s clothing, stuff like that. But the most noticeable feature of them is their dark black eyes. It's said that when you look into their eyes, they are like pure black, like the entire thing, and that they're like empty and hollow, and they bring a sense of dread and fear to them whenever you look at them. There are tons of cases of black eyed children all across the world, especially in the United States. The United States is a hotspot for black eyed children. And then there's black eyed children cases all across Africa, Australia, all sorts of things. They really first started appearing in the United States around the 1940s, but other cases of them show that they have possibly even in existence in ancient history. So there's the supposed statue in Turkey that's like one of the earliest statues ever found. And the statue has these obsidian eyes that are supposed to be very symbolic to what the Black Eyed Children are, which is perceived to be an omen of doom or possibly even a demon or, creepy stuff. Anyways, Black Eyed Children, one of the major stories of the Black Eyed Children, these are the three creepiest ones to me. So, the first ever case that I heard of Black Eyed Children was from this military man from Texas. He was driving on a dusty road in the middle of the night, trying to get home. He lived a trucker's life. So by the time he got home, on his drive home, he ran across a black-eyed child. This black-eyed child was standing on the side of the road, and the guy pulled over because he was like, what is a child doing on the side of the road? And the child, which is noticeable on most cases, was just staring down at the ground like this. And he was like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing out in the middle of the road all by yourself? And the kid looked up at him, and he had these piercing black like eyes, and the guy instantly felt dread. And he was like, can I get in your car? And the guy was like, no, you cannot get in my car. He just had this overwhelming sense of like fear that he couldn't explain. So he was like, absolutely not, you cannot get in my car. And the kid was like pressing him for more information. So the guy turned on his car and hauled away. But then a little bit down the road, he was like, that was really insensitive of me to get creeped out by a kid. That kid was on the side of the road, no help, no nothing. So he decided to turn around and drive back. And this was like a very open area. There was nothing around, nothing to do. So he looked around and he couldn't find the kid anywhere. Turns out he's just kind of disappeared. This is also a noticeable trait about these Black Eyed Children cases. They have a tendency, one, to bring an irrational sense of fear, two, to bring to ask unreasonable questions that are weird and out of place and make you feel uncomfortable, and three, when you look away, the children are just gone. So that's part of their urban legend. A different case, this was one of the first cases in America. It was in the 1940s. There was this old farmer man, and he was working on his farm, and he left to go into town for a little bit. And when he went into town, he went to a grocery store. And at this grocery store, he saw this kid following him around. So he left, and he saw the kid a little bit later as he was walking to his home. Now, this guy, he lived in a small town. He knew everyone there. So he's like, I don't recognize this kid. I'm going to just check on him. So he went up and he asked the kid a few questions. And the kid wasn't giving him like straight normal answers. He was like, hey kid, are you okay? And the kid was like, time to eat. And he was like, what? And he was like, kid, do you need help? Like, are you okay? And so the kid looked up at him and he saw the piercing black eyes, and he instantly had this fear of like running away. And the kid looked at him, and as if he knew what the guy was thinking, he was like, don't you dare run. And so he ran all the way home. This guy's family was convinced that since it was early 40s, that he had come in contact with a demon. So they immediately got in touch with the church, which they kind of reconfirmed their theories, because he was like, oh, well, demons will take on human appearances, but they can't always get everything right. So the eyes are noticeably wrong. So that's kind of why a lot of people lean towards the demons. But people also associate with them with omens of doom instead of being demonic. One specific case of this situation is a man and a wife were sitting in their home, and the children came up and started knocking on the doors. And it wasn't like a normal knock. It was like a slow, methodical knock, but they didn't stop until they came to the doors, which was really weird because it was like around like 2 or 3 in the morning. So the husband and wife got up. The kids asked them if they could come in, which you're not supposed to do with black-eyed children, because once they come in, it's like inviting badness into your home. So if you see a black-eyed child, don't invite them in. But they invited them in because they were like, oh, these poor kids, like, what are they doing? And they're like, we are waiting for our parents to come home. Can we just please come in? Like, da-da-da-da. And so they came in, and the mom went and busied herself making tea immediately for the children, while the father started trying to get information out of him. And the more he questioned him, the weirder he felt, until his nose started to bleed. And his palms were starting to bleed, and he didn't know what was going on. But right about then was when the wife came back in. He was just trying to clean himself up. And so the kids asked the wife if they could use the restroom. So they went to use the restroom. And when she came back down the hallway, she saw what of a mess of a state her husband was in, and started really getting scared. And she also noticed that the cat was cowering in the corner. But on top of that, when the children got out, they looked very seance-y and weird. And they were chanting stuff in the back corner of the hallway. And the wife was terrified. And then they were like, oh, our parents are here, we gotta go. And they ran out the door. But not too long after that, the family had 3 cats. Or 4 cats. 3 of the cats disappeared. And the last one was found murdered in a pool of blood. And then after that, the dad kept having these chronic nosebleeds that were awful and horrible, and so he ended up going to the hospital and was diagnosed with skin cancer. So, and a lot of these cases of the black-eyed children end up having illness associated with them, or sudden sickness, which is where the omen of doom idea comes from. So yeah, that's the abridged story of the black-eyed children. Hope you enjoyed. And yeah, it's really fun if you want to get into more of it.